What if I told you the next spike in oil prices won't start in the Middle East? It'll start with a speech, a policy, or even a single decision from Donald Trump. And by the time it hits the headlines, it'll already be too late to react. Because right now, behind the scenes, the foundations for the next major move in oil are quietly being set, and most people have absolutely no idea it's happening. The scary part? Every time this setup has appeared in the past, it hasn't just moved fuel prices. It's triggered inflation waves, shaken stock markets, and shifted billions of dollars from the unprepared to the ones who saw it coming. So the real question isn't whether oil prices are going up or down. The real question is, who's about to control them next? And how fast will it hit your wallet? Now here's where things get serious. Most people think oil prices are just about supply and demand. More oil, lower prices. Less oil, higher prices. Simple, right? Wrong. Oil is one of the most politically controlled assets on the planet. It's not just traded. It's managed, influenced, and sometimes even manipulated by powerful countries, alliances, and leaders. And when Trump entered the scene, he didn't play by the traditional rules. He came in with one clear objective: energy dominance. Not energy independence. Dominance. That meant turning the United States into the world's top oil producer, flooding the market with supply, and reducing reliance on foreign oil. And for a period of time, that strategy worked almost perfectly. U.S. production surged. Shale companies expanded aggressively. Regulations were rolled back. And suddenly, America wasn't just participating in the oil market, it was influencing it. Now think about what happens when a massive new supply hits the global market. Prices come under pressure. And that's exactly what we saw during parts of his presidency. Oil prices remained relatively controlled compared to earlier spikes, and that had a ripple effect. Lower fuel costs, controlled inflation, and economic momentum. But here's the part most people miss. When you disrupt a global market like oil, you don't just create opportunity, you create tension. Because while the U.S. was increasing production, groups like OPEC were watching closely. And they weren't about to lose control without a fight. So what followed was a global power game. At times, OPEC would cut production to keep prices high. Other times, they'd increase output to push prices down and squeeze U.S. producers who couldn't survive at lower price levels. And right in the middle of this was Trump, pressuring allies, negotiating deals, and even publicly calling out oil-producing nations to bring prices down. This wasn't normal presidential behavior. This was real-time influence over a trillion-dollar market. Then everything changed in 2020. Demand didn't just slow down, it collapsed. Flights stopped. Travel disappeared. Entire economies went into lockdown. And suddenly the world didn't need as much oil. But production didn't stop fast enough. So we had a situation no one thought possible. Too much oil. And nowhere to put it. Storage facilities filled up. Tankers sat idle. And in one of the most shocking moments in financial history, oil prices went negative. Let that sink in. Oil producers were literally paying buyers to take oil off their hands. Now this is where leadership decisions became critical again. Trump stepped in and pushed for coordinated production cuts between OPEC and other major producers. The goal was simple: stabilize the market before the entire energy sector collapsed. And eventually, it worked. Prices recovered. Demand slowly returned. And the oil market began its climb back. But here's why this matters to you today. Because that entire cycle revealed something powerful. Oil doesn't move randomly. It moves in cycles driven by fear, politics, and opportunity. And those cycles create windows where massive wealth is either lost or built. Fast forward to now, and we're entering another critical phase. Trump is back in the conversation. Policies are being discussed. And markets are once again trying to predict what comes next. If he pushes the same strategy, boosting U.S. production, we could see increased supply hitting the market again. And in theory, that should push prices down. But this time, the situation is far more complex, because today's oil market is sitting on a knife's edge. Geopolitical tensions are higher than they've been in years. Conflicts, sanctions, and shifting alliances are constantly threatening supply chains. At the same time, global demand is still strong, especially from growing economies. And then there's the energy transition. Countries trying to move toward renewables while still heavily relying on oil. So even if production increases, it doesn't guarantee lower prices. In fact, it could create even more volatility. Prices could swing faster. Markets could react harder, and opportunities could appear and disappear quicker than ever before. Now here's the part most people ignore. Oil prices don't just affect your fuel bill. They affect everything. When oil rises, transportation costs go up. Food prices increase. Businesses face higher expenses. Inflation climbs. And when inflation rises, central banks react, usually by increasing interest rates. That means more expensive loans, higher mortgage payments, and slower economic growth. But when oil falls, the opposite can happen. Costs decrease. Spending increases. Markets stabilize. So whether you realize it or not, oil is one of the biggest forces shaping your financial life. And this is why understanding what's happening right now is so important. Because we're not just watching politics. We're watching the early stages of a potential market shift. And the people who pay attention during this phase? They're the ones who position themselves before the big move happens. They don't wait for headlines. They don't follow the crowd. They prepare. Now, I'm not saying you need to become an oil trader overnight, but I am saying this. Start paying attention. Watch policy changes. Listen to what's being said about energy production. Track how global players are reacting. Because when supply changes, when alliances shift, when decisions are made at the top, the effects don't stay there. They flow down into markets, into businesses, and eventually into your daily life. And here's the reality most people won't admit. By the time the average person realizes what's happening, the opportunity is already gone. Prices have already moved, markets have already reacted, and the smart money has already positioned itself. So the question you need to ask yourself isn't, what will oil do next? The question is, will you understand it before it happens, or after? Because in markets like this, timing isn't just important, it's everything. And right now, with Trump back in the spotlight and global oil dynamics shifting again, we may be closer to the next big move than most people think. So stay alert, stay informed, and most importantly, don't wait for the headlines to tell you what already happened. By then, it's already too late.